my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo, where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course. It's Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. My guest today is an attorney, but also has a second career as a popular TikToker. He was actually recommended by a listener of the show. So first and foremost, shout out to Victor for letting me know about this person, because I've really enjoyed his content. So without further ado, my guest today helped me break down some of these trending stories. Luis Osorio, how you feeling, my bro?
I'm doing good, man.
I like the Puerto Rico gear that you're always rocking, always representing, which I love.
Gotta represent the island, especially with what's going on right now with the hurricane and stuff. So always nice to create awareness.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll get into all of that. And I also want to talk about how you have gotten so into TikTok at this point. So we'll dive into a bunch of that stuff. But first and foremost, man, I wanna kind of do a bit of a deep dive into a few topics. I mean, it's obviously Hispanic Heritage Month. That's a bit of a loaded word these days. So we'll talk a bit about that. Right. We'll talk about, man, on a sad note, and sadly too common these days, another shooting in Texas, and this was involving a 12-year-old. I know that you had some content on gun reform that I found to be really interesting. So I want to definitely get your take on that. We'll talk about, as you put it, the tangerine demon, Donald Trump.
The tangerine demon.
He can't seem to keep his name out of the news. There's a new book that talks about a lot of really wacky things that just confirm what a lot of us know, but specifically in this discussion of Greenland, which Puerto Rico somehow sadly got thrown into the mix as well. We'll talk about that. And then on a positive note for our Mi Gente segment, we'll honor somebody from the community who's doing incredible work. So, man, let's just start off with the deep dive in a segment that we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the
Let's start by talking about Hispanic Heritage Month, right? And this has become, like I said, a bit of a loaded word, the word Hispanic. I did a bit more of a deep dive on it last year for anybody who hasn't checked out, just kind of the history of the word Hispanic and some of the arguments that are being made on either side. Now, you have people, saying Latino is wrong, saying Latina, Latin Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage Month, right? All of the above. A lot of people get triggered by the word Latinx from our community as well. So let me just hear your perspective on this conversation as a whole, and I guess kind of where you fall on this.
Yeah, I think, inclusive inclusive language is a problem for many communities in the Latino or Latine or Latinx community.
Right.
I have always been of the mindset that we should use words that make the most amount of people comfortable.
Sure.
I have no problem using pronouns and using inclusive terminology because I see it as allyship, and I also think that it's important for the people to feel included. It's a complex process, and a lot of people, especially people in my age bracket, including between 45 and 55, they are still not used to it. They're still used to their old ways. If anything, my daughter was the one that taught me a lot on these things, because I myself didn't know a lot about it. And my daughter, who's 18, was kind enough to educate me on it and explain to me a lot of these things and why is it important to include everybody in the conversation. It's a very difficult topic because a lot of people still don't agree with it. They want to be called Latinos, or they want, I think it's an process that is going to take a long amount of time to evolve into what we really want it to be.
Right. And I think what you started with was great. The idea of inclusivity, right? Because I think so many people are like taking this shit personally, like it's an attack on everything they know about their culture, but it's just simply people wanting to feel a part of it. And, I don't want to get into, like I said, too much of the backstory because I've already gone through a deep dive of that. But, historically, the word Hispanic leaves out certain countries, right? Or certain parts of Latin America that may not speak Spanish, like our Brazilian, brothers and sisters, where Portuguese is the dominant language in that country, right? And then obviously when it comes to gender pronouns and all of the above, right? But I think you brought up a good point. A lot of people oftentimes have a problem adapting to change. I mean, it's what we see with our buddies on the far right as well. Don't seem to want to accept change. And are doing anything to fight against it. But yeah, I appreciate people of your generation having these kinds of conversations. And I always appreciate when I have listeners who are, of older age than I am and tell me that they're learning things from me, because I just think that that's the way it should be, right? We all have something to offer one another. And I don't think that this is an attack on our culture. It's just, a way for us to maybe evolve into something a little bit better.
Yeah, not at all. I think the problem is basically, a lot of us were raised conservative, and there's still a lot of people that hold those conservative views, and even those who have strayed away from it still have a little bit of conservative views lingering underneath that they might not even be aware of. And even I do, I have a lot of macho bullshit and old dumb views that we have to slowly get rid of. And, it's a matter of self-improvement, but self-improvement is difficult. It takes an amount of time to get there, but we still got to fight the good fight,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's a perfect kind of segue into this next conversation, which is a bit more, serious, but it's one that I wanted to talk to you about, because I think the first video I saw from you was addressing the idea of gun reform. And you were speaking about it from the perspective, if I'm not mistaken, of someone who is in fact a gun owner yourself, right?
Yeah, I was a gun owner for a while. And not only that, I used to be an attorney for gun ownership in Puerto Rico. I used to be the one, I was a member of the NRA. I used to work, because I don't know if you know this or your viewers know this, but in Puerto Rico, there's not a second amendment for gun ownership, right? In Puerto Rico, is a privilege. So you have a privilege that is allowed to you by the courts for you to carry a concealed weapon in Puerto Rico. And you have to do it through an attorney, and that attorney has to apply to the court, and you have to pay a bunch of fees. Now it's gotten a little bit more streamlined, and now it's way easier than it used to be. But I used to be an attorney who dealt with people getting ownership of firearms. But it evolved to something different, because even though I was a believer in the Second Amendment, and I still think it should be highly regulated in the United States. Because the problem is that here we have a microcosm of what is gun ownership and safe gun ownership in the United States that is wildly different from any other country in the world. And although I do think you have a right to preserve a firearm in your possession to protect your loved ones, they should be regulated in a different manner, because we also have a mental health problem in the United States that is completely unchecked. And no one is doing anything about it. And my video was creating awareness and saying, look, I am a gun owner, but I think we need to go back to the table, sit down, and have these conversations to see how we can all solve the problem, because our children and our loved ones are the ones that their lives are being taken over something that we have the power to solve, or to at least make it a little better.
Right. No, I think those are all great points, and I think are a great lesson, especially when you think about this story that I'm going to mention. Now, there was a shooting in Texas by a 12-year-old, and this was apparently this girl had a murder pact with her friend, and the plan was to both shoot their fathers and then run away, essentially. Now it's dark, and you speak to kind of a mental health crisis in this country, and I think a lot of that would probably fall under that umbrella. But this 12-year-old girl from Weatherford, Texas, she was found wounded in the street from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after shooting her father in the stomach. And at this point, they don't have any updates on their conditions due to privacy and the police, but both were airlifted to local hospitals. And it's just another stark reminder of the carelessness of many gun owners in this country, to the point that a 12-year-old could gain access to a weapon. I think, and it speaks to a lot of what you're talking about with, we're just far too lax on this idea of gun ownership. Way too lax.
And, gun owners will always say that it's a problem of people, not a problem of guns. But it's a double-edged sword, because we have such easily access to guns and firearms in the United States that it's just too easy for a kid to get a gun and then just commit mayhem. We need to be better. I am a gun owner. I have my safe. All my guns are in a safe at all times.
Yeah.
But the problem is that a lot of people don't take that practice into fruition, and it creates these types of situations that you can't come back from. Those lives are taken and they're gone.
Mm.
So we need to do better.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I mean, especially what always like pisses me off is that you see other countries doing certain things better than us, right?
Yeah.
Yet we find it so hard to adapt things. I mean, healthcare is a whole nother conversation, but gun ownership. We've seen countries like New Zealand and Japan have these really strict gun ownership laws, and it has like by far like night and day between what they had before as far as gun related violence and now, right? So we've seen it work. We know that making it harder, it will eliminate some of these crimes, and especially, and to your point, the background checks. Like, why are we fighting so hard against more, serious background checks, right? Especially when you talk about what happened in like Uvalde, Texas, where that kid was able to buy the guns legally, right?
Yeah.
And when you pull up somebody like his jacket, like you usually do, there's reports of kids talking about him with, certain behaviors or the schools being aware of certain things. And somehow we don't have a comprehensive system in 2022 that tracks all of that stuff on a serious way when we're talking about buying something that has the ability to take somebody's life. It just seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, we do not have safety measures in place to regulate this in a cohesive manner. And the problem is that the gun culture in the United States is deeply rooted in the American psyche. It's very different from anywhere all over the world, because people cling to the Constitution like it's written in stone, like it's the Book of Mormon, and they're like, well, Constitution, right? I'm like, the Constitution was written by men who didn't have, Teslas running around and machine guns.
Right.
And their knowledge at that time was so limited that they did what they could with what they have, but they never, thought about or could fathom the amount of firearms and weapons and complicated machinery that we have right now that can cause death in a massive amount and a larger scale. And people need to understand that we need to temper things to the ways that things are right now. But, unfortunately, they don't want to. And that's why Roe v. Wade, got overturned. We want to go back to these old ways or stay in these old ways of thinking that are not progressive and that are not sensible to the needs of the present humankind. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I love hearing that from you as an attorney, because I know, in law school, you're studying the Constitution, right? You're studying these really sometimes old, like really generationally old cases, right, that have set the precedent for the current state of affairs. I mean, my girlfriend's in law school right now, so by proxy, I feel like I've been like a student myself. But you're
gonna study with her.
I mean, yeah, exactly. You have no choice. I have to. You know what I mean?
You're gonna hear Marbury versus Madison and the people. You're gonna hear all that crap. It's gonna drive you crazy.
Oh, for sure. It already has.
Bet.
But blessings to her. She's in her last year. But man, I think for you as an attorney, you're taught to like value the Constitution, right? And the law of the land and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's refreshing to hear that perspective of like, yeah, but this shit was written by a bunch of old white men in a time that was far different than now, and we probably should be far more open to changing.
Absolutely. And we have to, even laws that are present, we have to think ahead of our own time and think, what is the possibility of these things staying the same way? But the problem is that people are just, it's the Make America Great Again slogan. People want to step back and go back to the ways things were used to. With slave ownership and racism and segregation and militias. And, people have a skewed view of what America should be. And unfortunately, half of the I don't want to say half, maybe a third of the population of the United States doesn't want things to change. And they're offering this very heavy resistance to looking at things with a different lens. It happens and I understand it. But at the same time, we're only harming our children, because I'm not going to be here in 100 years. They're the ones who are going to inherit this goddamn mess. If we don't fix it now, then they'll have a harder time.
Right. And actually, maybe I could get your take, because it's something that doesn't make sense to me. But you mentioned Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
To me, wouldn't that blatantly violate the idea of that we're supposed to have, separation of church and state, right? Because the Supreme Court is like these highly, Christian conservatives that are the ones responsible for making this move. How is that not an obvious argument, or how does that go overlooked when this is very obviously a religious battle, essentially?
Correct. Well, because they don't want separation of church and state. They say legally it should be implemented, but you have to understand something, that the right-wing movement and Republicans in the United States are the most hypocritical group that has ever existed. It's all about convenience for them. You know, they'll tell you, well, this is protected by the Second Amendment, but this, we can have opinions and we can change it and we lens. Whereas the privacy rights is explicitly included in the 13th Amendment. It's all there. The problem is that they want to see things the way they want to see it, you know? So it's all a little bit of a catch-22 mind fuck games where they adjust things as they see fit. If you read the decision of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I read the entire thing. I have it on my computer. It's like 100 pages. They all say the same thing, all 6 judges. They're like, well, the interpretation of Roe v. Wade was erroneous, which it was not. Roe v. Wade is one of the most clearly legal documents. You can, when you read it, it makes sense. And them saying, well, no, it was interpreted incorrectly, and you read the arguments of why, you can clearly see that it comes from a biased religious background. You know, it's very odd. And it's also by men who are not affected by it, you know, with the exception of Amy Cohen Barrett, who has internalized misogyny, and that's an entirely different conversation. But yeah, it's, you know, they want to play these games and interpret things the way they want when it's convenient to them. When it's not, they flip the script, and then the Constitution is the all-powerful book. It's just dumb. It's running games for them, you know, and we have to battle it, you know, and name more judges that are more liberal and that have different views. Luckily, we got Ketanji Jackson in there, and that's going to make good change and good policy change, but it takes time and effort.
Right. No, and that's a great point, that the hypocrisy, because they want less government, but then they want the government to tell a woman what she can or can't do with her body, right? So like it makes no sense at all.
It's ridiculous, you know, and we have to like think also, you know, how long are we going to let this ride? Because the problem is that the more, and you know, it's also on the Democrats, to be honest, because they had a chance. They had a chance to codify all this stuff, but they sat on it and didn't do it because they were more busy passing other laws that were more priority than this. And then when the truck came and hit them in the back, they were like, oh, I forgot about this little tidbit. But they did it, had it as for a long time in front of them, and they just sat on it. Now they're scrambling, right? Because it's a sense of but they never thought about it. This problem could have been solved a long time ago, and they didn't do it. So
right. Yeah, I love that you brought up that contrast, because the Democrats shit the bed on that. You know, the Democrats have proven to be terrible at offense, and then they just end up having to play defense all the time because they didn't take advantage when they could.
That is a fantastic way of putting it. I never thought about it that way, but it is poor offense versus adequate defense. Yeah, it's a great way to put it. You always wait for the problem to, you know, get it
Yeah, and then all of a sudden they're fucking inspired to do work and do something for the people. It's like it's so frustrating. I mean, and let's use that as a bridge to talk about Donald Trump, right? The
tangerine demon.
Oh, man, and this new book that's being reported from one of his insiders, and just literally like, it's at this point we know the fuckery that went on there, but it never ceases to amaze me the level of like depth of it. You know what I mean? And like the fear that his people had of like, this guy literally might get us in a war with multiple countries before he leaves office, you know?
Yeah, or if he comes back, and that hopefully not, but.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, yeah. Even worse at that point, but because at that point he's you know, impenetrable, right?
Yep.
You know, but this specific thing as it pertains to Greenland, and then the implications that had been reported a while ago about him talking about not only wanting to get Greenland, but then potentially trade the island of Puerto Rico following the hurricane for this. And now it's being reported that this conversation was actually far more serious than we even thought it was. And to the point that he actually had his national security advisor acting as like a correspondent between the US and the Danish government, and that essentially that the talks stopped when this became public, and it was just terrible press, and that's sort of what killed this conversation. And this is incredibly triggering on so many levels. I mean, as a human being, the lack of humanity to see the people of Puerto Rico, especially given what they just went through with Hurricane Maria, and then just thinking, hey, let's just dump them off on somebody else and ignore the fact that they are American citizens in need. And then B, it brings up the elephant in the room of like, no matter how much, many Puerto Ricans think that they're doing their own thing, they're at the beck and call of what the United States government decides what they can or can't do.
Always.
And that's really fucking scary.
Always has been, always will be, it looks like, because the problem is, I should write a book that is called The Puerto Rico Problem, because it really is a problem.
Please. Let's break it down.
It's a situation that the Greenland thing, let's start by the first one that you address about it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
The first thing we need to understand is Puerto Rico is a commodity of the United States of America. It's like coffee and it's like any other commodity, right? The difference is that they'll never trade it, but they keep getting money from it in perpetuity. It's perfect for them.
Sure.
But they don't have to give us all the rights that U.S. citizens have. They don't have to give us all the money that we are entitled to. They don't have to give us all the help that we need. All they have to do is keep us closely fed enough to where we won't hate them, but bamboozled enough to where we will stay there like a rabbit in a magic trick inside a hat, right? Not moving, not reacting, just kind of waiting for the magic trick to end, and then we wash, rinse, repeat, and do it all over again. We are a territory and a colony of the United States of America. They do with us as they please. And the problem is that it seems that it will never go away because Puerto Ricans cannot get to a point where we all agree on the same thing. Either we get to the point where we are an independent and sovereign nation, or we get to the point where we become a state of the United States with all of the rights of normal U.S. citizens, where we get both, we get representation for the president in our own land, and we get all the benefits that are entitled to us as U.S. citizens. But the problem is we still have this stupid Commonwealth lingering on us, which is a colony. And people, a lot of those, like 48% of us still gravitate to that bullshit because we never knew better, right? My mother, who was a PPD, she was a popular and supported the Commonwealth, said, well, you never know anything better. Why are you looking for something different? And I'm like, that's precisely why. Because what we have right now is not working, and you keep insisting on the same thing working when it doesn't, over and over again. And that's the definition of being nuts. But we have to think outside the box. This thing that happened with the hurricane just now is a prime example of it. We have a barge with a non-U.S. flag sitting in the middle of the fucking ocean with all the diesel that we might need. But we can't let it in because we have the Jones Act strangling us, saying, oh, well, if it doesn't have a U.S. flag, it can't go in. When the planet wants to help us, the United States chokehold on us, saying, no, you'll get help when I want, how I want. It's a tragedy. We are truly a colony of the United States, probably one of the last colonies on the planet. But we're right there with no end in sight.
Yeah. I think you're hitting on a lot of shit. I mean, to me, we already know the fucked up colonial mindset of the United States, right? It's there. It's plain to see. We've seen the language that we are of an alien race, is how they've described us, historically and things of that nature. We've seen that, we are not funded the same way even the poorest state in this country is when it comes to things like healthcare. And there was a report recently on the infrastructure of the healthcare system in Puerto Rico and just the lack of doctors that are available for patients that are in need. Yeah. It's a scary, scary thing. What you just said that I want to reiterate, there's literally a fucking ship with supplies that people need that are, going through devastation, and they can't even deliver it to them because of nonsensical paperwork. And outside of the U.S. bullshit, I feel like this is a safe space from one Puerto Rican to another. I'm always very careful about how I word these things, but the Puerto Rican government also isn't doing us any fucking favors, and neither are the people, to your point, because they're just fighting in circles and not recognizing what the fuck is going on, right? And I think there's a bit of a generational war happening right now in Puerto Rico between the young generation who is, out there in the streets protesting and wants that independence, and the older generation that still is like being sold the beauty of what would happen if Puerto Rico was a state, that they would all just be rolling in money and brand new cars and jobs and all these opportunities, right? What do you say to what you see going on in Puerto Rico? I've heard you talk about the corrupt government and things like that. I'd like to kind of address also how Puerto Rico itself is a bit shooting itself in the foot, essentially. Yeah,
but listen, we have to also be fair on these things, because it's like Nelson Dennis, the author of War on All Puerto Ricans, said, You know,
Yep.
estamos administrando la colonia. We're administering the colony, right? A lot of people ask me all the time on TikTok, oh, Luisito, you should go back and you should run and you will win. And I'm like, listen, probably. Who knows? I might even win. But here's the problem. You're giving me like a gigantic, like, shit situation and tell me, okay, do the best that you can with what you have. With this shit. It's like you're giving me a house with you know, no electricity, no running water. Oh, make this a B&B. I'm like, okay, like, what are you? But the problem is that we cannot administer the colony. I always tell people the exact same answer when they tell me to run from Puerto Rico. I tell them, I'll run for governor if it's independent or if it's a state. Because if it's independent, I can negotiate trade deals with a bunch of other countries. And if it's a state, then I have representation and I can vote against or in favor of Republicans or Democrats. I have 3.5 million people that can back me up to vote for the president and have power to wield. But if I am administering the Estado Libre Asociado or the colony, we are all screwed. This is like a zero-sum game because it's always somebody lose and somebody's going to win, and it's always going to be the United States who's going to win because we have no power. How are you going to administer with no power in hand? You're just basically taking a job for 4 years and then getting some money out of it and then leaving. That's all that they're doing. And for them, for the politicians, it's very lucrative because there's really never going to be no true change. It's just a matter of getting paid and getting the checks from their diets, from their traveling around the island and getting money for food. It's a zero-sum game. It doesn't make any sense. That's why corruption in Puerto Rico is happening, is because it's a perfect recipe for it. You can't leave a fruit in the middle of a table and then come 2 months later and look at it and be like, oh, why is it rotten? Well, because you didn't put it in a fucking fridge. You didn't put it in a Tupperware. You just let it sit there waiting for something miraculous to happen. It's very easy to blame people for not doing their best when you're not giving them the adequate tools to do so. Right.
I think that is a fair point. I guess for me, as a human being, it hurts my heart to see people like Wanda Vasquez fucking like you took over in such dire circumstances, and then you just decided that you would still, you know, take advantage of the people and line your fucking pockets instead of just being and you're Puerto Rican. Like think about it. Like as an American, we're all coming from different places, but as a Puerto Rican, you're from the fucking island. You're there. You're one of the people raised there. You understand how dire certain circumstances are there, and you're still like okay with robbing them blind. For me, that's what really pisses me off. You know, first and foremost, with a lot of the corruption that I see there. It's like you are one of the people in the most real way possible, unlike any other politician in the United States.
No doubt. It's tragic what some Puerto Ricans that are people that live and were born in our island and doing to the island itself. There's no hiding that.
Right.
The problem is that the people who are honest and want to fix the island don't want to run. You know, people like me, like if I were there, I would probably, you know, but the problem is, again, the people that are honest don't want to take the problem and make it their own. It's too much. I will grow like gray hair all over and fucking go crazy because there's so much to fix with no help from the US. And then who are you going to put in that is of your confidence that you can trust? Where right now there's so many people that are desperate that are just going to take the easy route and just steal money. It's terrible. It's a very tragic. The Wanda Vasquez situation is one of the worst ones I've ever seen because she had power and she had the money and she still wanted more. Greed is a motherfucker.
Bro, it really, really is. I mean, but even, and the last thing I'll point on that is like the voters, how the fuck do you vote Ricky Rosselló back into an office? Even if it's a garbage, like it doesn't mean much. After all you saw, you still came out on fucking the day and voted this idiot back into a position of power.
I made a TikTok video about it that went viral and people were like, you should talk more about Puerto Rico. And I'm like, listen, dude, I'm not going to, you know, I create awareness about my island, but I'm not going to keep like a goddamn parrot talking every week. Because you are the same people who are asking me to talk about it are the same people who go in and vote. You had Alexandra Lugaro, a person that was a good candidate, a woman, bilingual, wanted to legalize THC so that the island can get more revenue, which is where I live in Colorado, worked fantastically. We have more money than many other states. But they don't want change. They complain and complain. And then when there's a chance to do something different and brave and powerful in the ballot and say, fuck all you three, because you haven't done anything, I'm going to vote for this person who has an entirely different mindset and idea of how things should run. You vote for the same people that robbed you for the last 20 years. Well, then you deserve the government that you have because you're not thinking outside the box. You're thinking in colors. Oh, blue or red or no, you have to stop it with that shit. It's not worked in the past. It's not going to work now. And it hurts me to see the people of Puerto Rico do this shit, but they are the masters of their own demise sometimes.
Yeah. And that's what scares me about independence, is because I don't know where it's going to go, right? Obviously, this current situation isn't working, but at the same time, I don't trust, many of a lot of the older generations there, because they just fucking keep doing the same thing over and over again.
The same thing. We need and I agree with you on the older generation. We need new people with new ideas that are younger. I always say, if you're old, I'm like Kanye. If you're older than me, I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't, because if you're older than me, you were the ones who fucked the situation up. Why are you gonna do solutions now for something that you created? I want to hear from people. See, I think Kanye is fucking nuts, but I agree with him on that. If you're not younger than me, I don't want to fucking hear it. I'm the same way. I'm like, you people have sat on this shit for a while. That's why I don't even have arguments with my family or my mom or those people who still think Luis Muñoz Marin. Oh yeah, he put shoes on us, for crying out loud.
Right.
Luis Muñoz Marin was like, he was crazy. He did at the time what he thought was best, but now that thing is over. Like, we need really like different, fresh ideas.
Yeah. You just hit on something. I don't want to go too deep, right? But it's not Puerto Rico, because we have people from all over. But the criticism of Marin is that he killed, our farmers and all that kind of stuff. But I think you're right. I think there's a lack of recognition that Puerto Rico was in a very dire circumstance. It was basically a lose-lose type of situation, and he just did what he thought was best and couldn't predict the shitstorm that would happen decades upon decades later. And I think that's a missing point sometimes with certain people. I think Nelson Dennis is very critical, and like a lot of hardcore independents are very critical of him. But I think there's a lack of recognition of just like where Puerto Rico was during that time period of like fucking dirt floors and the poverty rate on that island at that time. It was a lose-lose situation.
Oh yeah, it was a different era, and now we need different solutions for a different problem.
Sure. Last thing I want to touch on when it comes to Puerto Rico, because I saw this on your TikTok, and it was a viral thing in general. The gentrifiers of Puerto Rico running with their tails between their legs when the hurricane was hitting. And to me, this should seem like a very cut and dry, like, fucking thing for anybody watching. Like, yeah, these people are coming to the island, not contributing anything, but reaping all the benefits. But when I post shit about it, I still get people arguing back and forth about like, well, what's wrong with it? These people are contributing to the local economy when they come over there and all that kind of stuff. Right. Break it down a bit for me.
They don't, because you're looking at it in a microcosm of the 1%. People need to understand a lot of things when it comes to the economy. Number one, the 1% doesn't contribute to the entire economy. When one person buys a Ferrari in Puerto Rico, that person is not contributing to the economy of Puerto Rico. It just contributed to the people that sell $80 steaks and $350,000 cars. The people that contribute to the economy is the middle class, which comprises like 60% of the well, not even that, because now half of the population of Puerto Rico is under poverty guidelines. Maybe like a 45% comprise the middle class in Puerto Rico. But what happens when you're giving? The problem is that the Reagan mindset of the trickle-down economics. We're going to give rich people tax benefits so they don't pay any taxes. They come to Puerto Rico. They employ 3 people. They invest in the island, and then everything is going to be fixed. That is a lie. Because number one, the people that are coming in, those jobs that they're employing are not high-paying jobs. They're mostly people that clean up the house, or somebody that runs errands for the millionaires that goes to the detox so they don't have to do that fucking line. And then they pay like $60 a day. You're not stimulating the economy. And then on top of that, you're buying property from Puerto Ricans. You're marking it up, B&Bing it at a higher price. And then you're gentrifying in real time because you're taking pure communities, turning it into rich communities, kicking those poor people out, and making it so that only rich people can afford it. It's literally gentrifying. It's like, fuck, there's no hiding it. Right. It's not fucking complicated. And then they say the same shit. People come in my feed. Well, there's Puerto Ricans passing the law. Yeah, it's Puerto Ricans passing the law because the Puerto Ricans that are passing the law are politicians who are benefiting from it because these millionaires are donating to their campaigns. It makes complete fucking sense for them, but it doesn't make sense for the people of Puerto Rico. And what's going to happen is eventually that the Puerto Ricans that live in the island are no more. And then when you go to the island in 20 years, it's going to be just Americans. Listen, dude, I went.
Look at Hawaii.
Culebra. I was there with Amy like 6 months ago. I went to 3 places: a pizzeria, a joint where they sell like capurias, and something else. I think it was like a rental shop for gear for scuba. And they were, I went to, hey, I'm una capurria de jueye. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish. I'm like, what?
A culebra.
Bro, I'm in fucking like, am I in like Twilight Zone? Is this like Black Mirror? I am in like fucking Puerto Rico, my island. And you don't speak my own language?
For context for anybody, you're talking about Culebra, which is one of a small island off of Puerto Rico, which historically, when I was growing up, it was fucking difficult to get to Culebra or Vieques because the ferry system, you had to get there like fucking 5 a.m, all this stuff. So the fact that that it's like gentrified to the point that there are people not speaking Spanish is fucking mind blowing.
Insane, dude. Same thing with the fucking when I went to the panaderia. Oh, I'm sorry, there was this like American dude, only English, and I'm like, wow, this is like a microcosm of what's going to happen in the entire island in a few years if we keep going properly like this. And it's getting more expensive to be there. But that's not the worst part. You know what the worst part is? That the people of Puerto Rico, people that have lived there their entire life, do not get that benefit. What does that say about us? That with the people that we let the island colonize it like years ago, 100 years ago, or whatever time, and then they drained it of their resources, took all that money, became rich, left the island to their own demise, now come back 100 years later when it's all fucked up and do it again. Watch me repeat. Now we're going to take over again, and we're going to get the taxes again, and we're going to buy from you again, and we're going to gentrify it again. I'm like, this is fucking incredible. This is literally lightning destroying the same place twice.
Right. Well, to your point, it shows you that, they're not allowing Puerto Ricans to take advantage of it because they want that white dollar. They're right. Like the colonial mindset of the white skin tone being superior is at work there, and even the Puerto Ricans in power there would prefer that, which is the fucking scary thing about it. And to your point, when it comes to contributing to the local economy, many of these guys live in fucking gated communities like Dorado, where they literally don't even have to leave to go fucking food shopping, right? It's all right there inside of the community. They don't have to leave those walls and interact with the local Puerto Ricans.
And they're not contributing.
A lot of people are missing.
They're not contributing anything because when the hurricane, what happened? They all fucking left. I'm like, well, I thought you were Puerto Rican. You show up on camera all the time on fucking YouTube. I'm Puerto Rico. Puerto Rican. Well, you're so fucking... Then do Puerto Rican shit. Go and help people out. And then people were coming in my comments will come in. Oh, well, you're a hypocrite because you left. Yeah, I left because they fucking destroyed the island and I had no choice because I couldn't make a buck. But if you give me a tax break, I'll go back if I pay no taxes. But no, I don't get that. They do. And that's the difference. I left because I had no fucking choice. They came back because they have all the choices in the world that we're giving to them because of their privilege. There's a fucking difference and people don't see it. But they don't care. The law says they have to be there 186 days. That's it. They won't be there a day. And not even that, because with vacation and special concessions by the law that gives them like 14 days where they can leave in case there's a fucking emergency declared by FEMA, which just happened. They leave. They don't give a shit. They just want to get their breaks, drink pina coladas, get drunk, and enjoy the sun. That's all they can do.
Yeah, and that's if the government is even keeping a real eye on them to make sure they're upholding that standard, which we've seen has been an issue. Man, so I loved having that talk with you. I hope it was eye-opening for a lot of people. Now we've gotten the bullshit out of the way. We've gotten some of the heavier topics. I want to move on to something positive and celebrate somebody from our community who's being honored and doing amazing things in our Mi Gente segment. But first, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Mi Gente. All right, so like I said, we talked about a lot of the nonsense. We got some shit off our chest today. Let's talk about a highlight from our culture right now. Bad Bunny, right, who has been a really just incredible representative for Latinos, not just Puerto Ricans, but Latin culture as a whole. And of course, as Puerto Ricans, a very special place in all of our hearts. But he's having a really cool thing happen. He's doing everything, but San Diego State University is actually offering a class on Bad Bunny, which is incredible and even cooler when they break down what the class will talk about, right? So students at SDSU will be able to delve deeper into his influence in the world of music, politics, fashion, and culture, and explore his contributions to changing norms of masculinity, as well as how Puerto Rico is perceived to the rest of the world. And you have to give a big shout out to the professor, Dr. Nathan Shea Rodriguez, who actually also taught a class about Selena before that. and chose Bad Bunny this year because of his undeniable impact on Latin culture, they're saying. So, man, you see this, I'm sure this popped up on your timeline somewhere. How do you feel seeing this happen?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's awesome. I think Bad Bunny, it's ironic because he has a lot of haters, right? A lot of people who think they are from the Alta Alcurnia, right? Who think they're fancy in Puerto Rico, and Bad Bunny is like cafe. That's bad. That's,
Right.
But
right.
people don't understand how much of an impact and how much of our culture is exposed out there for the world to see. Whereas if Bad Bunny didn't exist, a lot of people wouldn't even know where Puerto Rico is when you think about it.
Right.
And now when people see me, I went to Colombia recently. I was in Medellin, and they were like, "Oh, Bad Bunny," and they were like, they saw my hat and they immediately thought Bad Bunny. So it's cool that at least they can place me,
Yeah.
And he's putting us out in the map. But there's also a lot of stuff that we can learn from him in terms of our culture.
Sure.
When he said "dando vuelta por condado," I'm like, people don't know what it's like to dando vuelta por condado, like, unless you lived in Puerto Rico. And then I talked to Americans, and he's like, "No, there's a place that's tourist, and we used to go when we were and roam around in our cars." People were like, "Wow, I didn't know that." And to see Americans' faces light up, knowing these things that they didn't know and knowing what he means, I think it's something really cool because it hits close to my home, I think it's fantastic that they're teaching that, and I hope that a lot of Americans that have never been in Puerto Rico even can learn from it,
Yeah, and I love that it's deeper than just music, that they're talking about all the other contributions and conversations that he has. And I think, Bad Bunny is incredible to me because he's a picture of what it means to be authentically yourself and how the world can embrace you for being authentically you. I mean, Bad Bunny is the biggest artist in the world, and those numbers that he's doing are not just Spanish-speaking people. It's also white Americans who don't understand what he's saying but feel the music somehow, some way, right?
Absolutely.
And that's it particularly impactful because I love that he also stuck so true to his culture, because if you know, like historically, many Latin singers to kind of cross over to white audiences had to start singing in English, right? Selena, Mark Anthony, right? They all had to make an English album in order to find success. And Bad Bunny is finding more success than all of them, during their heyday, and he's doing it in his native tongue, which I think is so incredible that he stuck to his guns like that.
The first Latino to ever get a Grammy in his own fucking language. Benito, the only one. I remember watching the movie Selena, how much her dad insisted, you have to transform, you have to English and blah, blah, blah. And Benito's like, I'm going to do me. Yeah. And eventually they'll see it. And he was right. And that is impressive. Right. Not to talk to the fact that he's also eliminating misogyny, eliminating stupid macho tropes of gender norms, eliminating all these phobias, and being open to the LGBT community and bringing everyone together. Yes. What he is doing is beautiful for the youth of Puerto Rico. But you always have these two conservatives that have their weird view, that's whatever. We always will have that. But you know what? He is opening the door to this new generation. Think of how many people that were trans lost their lives in Puerto Rico because of this phobia.
Right.
And he is like, no, let's change that. Let's be inclusive. Let's love everyone. And also, he's the ultimate philanthropist. He's using his power with Bianca Gradao to create this amazing documentary.
Yes.
To create awareness of what's happening in Puerto Rico with gentrification, with our relationship with the United States, with hurricane. He helped take out a governor with Residente, where no one wanted to do shit, and he hopped up in a fucking caravan and said, "No, this is our island. Yeah, you're not gonna."
He left the tour.
Puerto Rico. The dude is fucking amazing.
He was in the middle of Bro, he was in the middle of a European tour and was like, sorry, we have to postpone it. I'm flying back to Puerto Rico. That's huge.
Yes. People forget the true idols of the island. Felix Trinidad, when he spoke about Vieques and the bombings. Benito is that new generation who's doing the same. And we owe a lot to him and to Residente, René. But these people are bringing awareness to our island better than the politicians who are dressed in a goddamn are doing.
Yep. No, that's a fact. And I'm glad we got to talk about that, because I think a lot of people think it's all hype, but it's not. It's really somebody firing on all cylinders. His art is amazing, but then also recognizing the power that he has and using it for the good of people, I think is incredible, Amazing. And I think you're doing the same thing with your TikTok. So I want to dive into that a little bit, man, because
I don't know. 300 going strong, but we'll see.
Right. Listen, man, I think you're having a lot of really good conversations, and it's obviously like I said, somebody told me about you, so you're having that impact, which is amazing.
Like,
Obviously, you're not of the TikTok generation. Shit, I'm not of the TikTok generation. How does this whole thing happen where it becomes such a big part of your life?
listen, dude, I have no idea. I went in. Listen, it's been not even a year, because when I did my first video, I was talking to Amy the other day because we were in Seattle and I got bored. She was doing something else in Seattle, that visiting family or something. And I was at the hotel alone, and I saw this TikTok, and I used to browse it because my daughter was like, "Hey, you should check out TikTok. I think you like it. There's a lot of weird stuff." And I started looking at videos of cats and shit. And it's kind of cool. There's a squirrel surfing. It was great. But one day I put a video, and I'm like, let me just put something out there that I have to say and see how, and whatever. If 2 people see it or 100, and I posted something about Puerto Rico and 20,000. I was like, that's weird. And I did like another one on something I thought about women and misogyny. It was like 30,000. I was like, whoa. And then it went from like 10,000 people following me in the first month. I was like, whoa, I got 10,000 followers. This is strange. Then it went to like 20. Then in 2 months, it was like 50. 6 months, 100. I was like, I mean, it's not even a year yet, and I saw 300. I'm like, wow, this is. And I talked to people who have been on TikTok for 2-3 years. They have 50,000 followers. So obviously, something is resonating where people want to hear my messages. I try to make it about fun, about roasting, because I tell people I'm a roaster in nature. If you come with stupid shit on my page, I'm going to roast. That's what I do, and I like it, because I think we've taken enough insults, and now it's time to pay the insults back, and I do it in a way, and I enjoy it. But if people like it, it's what I said in my last 300 tribute. If people like it, I'm going to keep doing it. And so far it's worked. So I don't know.
No, I think it's beautiful, especially as a person of color, you know what I mean? Because it's like, there aren't many platforms or people we can kind of look to, at least not in the same regularity that we know, like all the fucking white political pundits that are famous out there, be it on social media or on the regular media, and media. I was doing a talk the other day, and I looked up a stat where it was like the entertainment industry, specifically media, had like the worst rate of Latin representation, like behind or in front of the camera. Like it was like the industry had the worst diversity of any other industry, yet this is the one that literally fucking sets the mindset of everybody in this country, essentially, in some sort of way. It sets the beauty standards, right? It sets how we think about things in politics or our opinion on popular culture, yet we don't have that representation. That's why I think things like TikTok are incredible. I mean, as many downsides as it has, it also empowers creators, and it empowers voices that otherwise would have been silenced by mainstream media. And I think that's why you're seeing that reaction, because you're putting something out there that many people were thirsting for, but shit didn't have anywhere to go to. You know what I mean? So I think that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. I appreciate your beautiful and kind words. And I also see people approach me on the street, which is weird. They're like, oh my God, what you're doing is important. Like I have people in New York when I was there, people in other states, people from other countries, New Zealand, like England. I had a guy the other day in Cambodia. I'm like, Cambodia? What the hell are you doing? They're listening to my ass. It's just so strange that there's these people all over the world that I'm impacting, but especially in the Latin American community, which I think is so cool. I have a lot of Mexicans following me, people from Guatemala, from everywhere, Brazil, Argentina. And it's really cool because they're like, oh my God, you're giving us a voice so that people can see. We're not all like this box of people that, oh, I work in construction. No, there's the lawyers, there's astronauts, there's people in entertainment, there's people in whatever, in construction, there's everything. We do a lot of things. We're not just this tiny group of people who just do this. And I think it's cool that we gave that exposure out and that I help promote it. And there's a lot of other good content creators like Dean Huertas and Yo Soy Jolly. There's, so many good people that are putting a good representation of our island and our Latino community out there. And I just try to, boost other people and help everybody out. And at the same time, create awareness and education on our island and where we come from and what we do and what is happening. I think it's important as well. And I feel very proud that I can do that, even if it's in a small scale or a large scale. Hopefully I'll keep growing and keep creating more awareness. I want to get into politics and helping politicians now and push agendas that favor impact the Latino community as well. So hopefully we'll see what.
Yeah, I love that goal because it's much needed, because many Democrats were somehow fucking shocked when they realize that not all Latinos vote exactly the same way in this last election. News to them. We're like, it doesn't make any sense, but
hopefully the numbers will go down as I keep roasting.
Right. We can only hope. Where can people follow you? Anybody listening that doesn't follow you on TikTok yet?
My TikTok handle is basically my it's Luisitorio, Luisito RIO 787, the old area code for Puerto Rico. Luisitorio 787. And in that account, I also have an alternate account, Busarapo, which you can see in case they ban me. But at this point, I don't think I'll be banned. I think after you reach a certain milestone on TikTok, you become a little bit untouchable. It's weird. It's like being LeBron in the NBA. Not comparing myself. I'm not LeBron. I'm not comparing myself to him. But sure. When you reach a certain following, the foul, you hit someone, they don't call it on you, you know?
Right. Because you're bringing in the numbers that they need.
It's strange. So it's like Drew Apollo. People are like, how does she get away with insulting all these men? And I was like, well, because she has 1.7 million followers.
Right. It's funny how that works out, but man, I'm so glad that we got to connect, dude. And I was telling you, I think I told you I was trying to reach out to you for a minute, and I couldn't find your info, and randomly you started following me, so it was just kind of like the universe put us together. But I really appreciate the conversation, my bro. We definitely gotta do this again, and hopefully collab on something. I love what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite and for letting me hang out with you for a little bit. And if you ever want to do this again, let me know. I always like to. I think TikTok, it compresses you into 3 minutes, but I think these podcasts, right, because you can amplify so much more on the topics, and people get a sense of who you really are. So I appreciate that. But absolutely. Good luck on your show. Keep pushing all this wonderful information that you got. And if you ever want to do it again, let me know. You got a friend out here in Colorado.
Oh, thank you, my bro. I appreciate that.
You have a good one,
man. Big shout out to Luis for hopping on the show. Always appreciate hearing, educated people from our community having really important conversations like he's doing on TikTok. Big shout out once again to Victor for connecting us. And that's why you should just, DM me your feedback. This is an open, communication source. This isn't just my show, but I want to hear what, y'all think and what you want to talk about and people you might want to see or hear me talk to. So always at DJ Dramos if you want to connect in that way. And speaking of, real quick, we're going to hear y'all's voice for the first time here on season 2. Get your take on one of these topics we've been talking about in a segment we call Ask A Gringo.
Ask A Gringo. I have a question.
All right, so anybody new here for season 2 of Life as a Gringo, I allow y'all to be a part of the conversation because, again, the show is just as much about you as it is me. So at DJ Dramos on Instagram, if you want to be part of these conversations, and we'll make this quick because this episode's running a little bit long. But let me see. I asked y'all in regards to Bad Bunny's, class at San Diego State University. I asked y'all simply, who would you want to take a class on and why? Now, first one, it sounds only fitting, and it's from at As Ayuri, and they said Bad Bunny's manager because he's a genius. And yeah, this is another great example of somebody I definitely love to pick their brain. I agree with you 100%. And not a lot of people know behind the scenes. It's begun to be talked about a bit, but Bad Bunny not only is having like a crazy moment in his career, but behind the scenes financially, the way that him and his team have set up his finances, he has so much more ownership over his music, therefore gets a bigger cut of the money than probably any other artist in the world right now. And it's just because of a genius way to secure leverage and to build up his name to a point that labels had to give him whatever he wanted. So yeah, definitely Bad Bunny's manager. I would put that on my list as well. And let's see, I'll read one more here. At Ahmad199789 says, Tenoch Huerta, a Mexican actor now doing English movies like Black Panther 2. And I love that. I mean, I think anybody who has had a successful career in the Latin space and then now is finding ways to cross over into English movies. I mean, obviously they're finding a way to navigate the industry and make a name for themselves and get those opportunities. So yeah, I think that's beautiful. I'll quickly say for me, I think I probably have to go. Bad Bunny already exists. I'd have to go with Nipsey Hussle. I think he's somebody who, man, gone far too soon, but somebody who I always enjoyed hearing the way that his mind thinks. And I've read a book, about his life and his story and all that kind of stuff. And I just found it so inspiring and so fascinating. And I took a lot away from it. So I think, doing an entire class on him would definitely be something, I would love to be a part of for sure. And thank y'all so much for participating in our Ask a Gringo segment for this week. Again, at DJ Dramos on Instagram if you want to be a part of these conversations. Now, with that said, man, let's quickly tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, so Luis and I, we dove into a lot of this stuff pretty deeply, so I'm not gonna overdo it here with the kind of simplifying and all that we've talked about. But the idea Hispanic Heritage Month, versus Latino, Latinx, these different terms that are happening. I think we have to understand that it's not about people being overly woke or this that. It's about inclusion, right? And making a space that everybody feels like they can call their own. And it doesn't mean that it's dumb just because it goes. Or it is different, I should say, than what we learned growing up, right? Ideas evolve. We all evolve, hopefully, as human beings. And that's the goal of all of this, right? So I think we have to just keep an open mind as things begin to change and evolve and understand that, generally speaking, it's for the better. Now, we talked about gun control and this latest shooting that we saw here in Texas. And I loved his perspective, Luis, as a gun owner himself, somebody who even, advocated on behalf of gun owner rights, to come to the table and say, listen, as much as I believe in the right to bear arms, we have to revisit this and do something to fix what is an obvious glaring problem. And I just wish that more people, had a similar mindset to him to understand that this is bigger than your own personal right of wanting to own a firearm. This is something that is really becoming, an epidemic in this country, gun violence, and we have to do something to stop it, essentially, right? Now, when it comes to Trump and, this latest book, Greenland and Puerto Rico, to me, Trump is going to Trump. I think the idea of Puerto Rico being traded to Greenland, even if it wasn't necessarily really going to happen, I think the fact that the Puerto Rican people, like Luis said, are just a commodity that can be thrown on the table for a potential trade just speaks to how fucked up the current situation is and the status of Puerto Rico and why this really needs to be addressed and why Congress needs to start taking this seriously and understand that, people want to have their voice heard on this, and we need to make a decision and stop leaving Puerto Rico in this limbo state that is just incredibly inhumane by 2022 standards. Now, back to Bad Bunny, man, you gotta love to see the recognition someone like him is getting. It is beautiful and it is so well deserved. Somebody who is incredible at his craft and then decides to use his platform for good. I will always celebrate that. And shout out to this professor at the university over there at San Diego State University for understanding the cultural impact someone like Bad Bunny is having and creating a class like that where students can really learn about him and our culture and all the work that he's doing. So, man, big shout out to that professor. And thank y'all so much for tuning into our Thursday Trends episode. I appreciate you. First one of season 2. We do this every single Thursday Trends episode. Make sure you go follow Luis on TikTok. He's doing a lot of amazing stuff. And man, I'll catch you on Tuesday for a brand new episode. So then, stay safe, have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.